This is a fictional, original story created for entertainment and educational reflection. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. You monster. Tell them where you hit her. My sister Olivia was screaming, collapsing into my father's arms as the SWAT team dragged me out of my cabin in handcuffs. I didn't fight. I didn't yell. I just stared at her. Because exactly 24 hours earlier, she wasn't screaming. She was begging. She begged me to hide her daughter, to keep her safe, to help her cover up the bruises she said she couldn't explain. Now she was pointing at me, letting the world believe I was capable of the unthinkable. People assume innocence looks loud, that you scream until someone listens. But when you've spent a lifetime as the family's scapegoat, silence feels inevitable. Before I tell you how this lie was built and how it finally collapsed, take a moment to tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Then stay with me. Because this story didn't start with handcuffs. It started with conditioning. It started exactly 24 hours before the raid. My cabin in the Smoky Mountains was supposed to be unreachable, a place where my family couldn't follow me, a place where silence wasn't punishment but peace. I bought it with the advance from my last book, paid in full, no loans, no names attached but mine. That mattered to me more than I realized at the time. The only sounds were wind moving through pine needles and the soft scratch of my pen against paper. Then my phone rang. Olivia. My stomach tightened before I even looked at the screen. That reaction was automatic, conditioned. For as long as I could remember, Olivia's calls never brought good news. They brought urgency, chaos, problems that somehow became mine. I almost let it go to voicemail. I should have. Ashley, thank God, she cried the second I answered. Her voice was sharp with panic, the kind that hijacks your nervous system. It's Brandon. He collapsed. They think it's a heart attack. I'm following the ambulance. She didn't pause for questions. She never did. I can't let Isabella see him like this, she said quickly. You have to take her. Then the line that always worked. Please, you're the only one I trust. The logic made no sense. Brandon was 34. He ran marathons. They had nannies, a housekeeper, a driver. There were a dozen options closer than my cabin. But panic is contagious, and Olivia had always known exactly how to infect me. I said yes. I always said yes. 2 hours later, a black SUV tore up my gravel driveway. Olivia stepped out looking nothing like a woman racing to a hospital. Her makeup was perfect. Her designer dress spotless. She moved fast like someone trying to outrun consequences. She pulled Isabella from the back seat. My niece didn't look at me. She stared at her shoes. It was mid-July, 90 degrees. Humidity pressed against your skin like plastic wrap. But Isabella was wearing a thick hoodie, pulled tight around her face. When I reached for her hand, she flinched. Not a startled jump, a practiced one. I saw the bruise then, just a glimpse at her wrist. Deep purple, finger-shaped. I noticed it, and immediately, my mind did what it had been trained to do. She fell. She's clumsy. Olivia is stressed. Don't make this worse. I didn't ask questions, because in my family, questions were treated like attacks. I had spent my entire life learning that peace was purchased by compliance, that love was conditional, that if I absorbed the damage quietly enough, everyone else could pretend things were normal. So I took Isabella's hand. I let the truth slide down my throat like broken glass. And I led her inside. Inside the cabin, everything felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears and forces your thoughts to get louder. I locked the door behind us. The sound was small, ordinary. I told myself I was being careful, that I was protecting a child. I didn't realize yet that I had just locked myself inside someone else's plan. I made Isabella hot chocolate even though it was still summer outside. It was something my mother used to do when things felt wrong but unspoken. Warm cup, sweet taste, distraction instead of truth. Isabella sat on the couch with the mug in both hands. Didn't drink it. She kept her knees pulled tight to her chest, hood still up, sleeves covering her wrists. She didn't ask where her father was. She didn't ask when her mother was coming back. She didn't ask anything at all. Every time I moved too fast, her shoulders tensed. Every time I raised my voice even slightly, her eyes flicked up like she was bracing for impact. I noticed all of it, and I did nothing. That's the part that's hardest to admit. Not because I didn't care, but because caring felt dangerous. For most of my life, I had been taught that noticing was the first step to blame. When Olivia broke things, I was told not to make a scene. When she lied, I was told to understand. When she hurt people, I was told she was fragile and that I was strong enough to carry it. So when I saw Isabella trembling, my brain followed the same script. Don't escalate, don't accuse, don't be dramatic. Keep the peace. That night, Isabella slept on the couch. She tossed and turned, small sounds catching in her throat. Every time she whimpered, my body jolted awake. I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair across from her, watching her chest rise and fall, my phone face down on the coffee table. I didn't trust it. Not because it rang, but because it didn't. No call from Olivia, no update, no explanation. When morning came, light filtered through the pine trees like thin glass. I tried calling Olivia. Straight to voicemail. I called Brandon. Straight to voicemail. I made pancakes, stacked them neatly on a plate, pretending routine could stand in for safety. Isabella sat at the table, stared at the food. Didn't touch it. Then my phone buzzed. Not Olivia. My mother. We always knew you were jealous, Ashley, the message read. But this? You're a monster. I stared at the screen, my hands suddenly cold. Before I could respond, another message came through. From my father. Give her back. Don't make this worse. You're dead to us. They didn't ask if Isabella was safe. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't ask anything at all. They had already chosen a story, and I knew that story well. In our family, Olivia spoke, and reality rearranged itself around her. If she said I was dangerous, then danger was what they saw. I stood up from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I thought I needed to explain. That was when the windows began to rattle. The windows didn't shake because of wind. They shook because of weight. Tires on gravel, engines idling too close. Blue and red lights spilled across the cabin walls, turning my quiet into a crime scene. Before my mind could catch up, the door exploded inward. Commands overlapped, hands grabbed my arms, cold metal snapped around my wrists. I didn't fight. Not because I was guilty, because my body already knew this role. The scapegoat doesn't argue. The scapegoat absorbs. They led me outside. Olivia was already there. She collapsed into my father's arms, screaming so loud it cut through the trees. You monster, she cried. Tell them where you hit her. Every head turned toward me. I didn't look away, because exactly 24 hours earlier, she hadn't been screaming. She had been begging. They shoved me into the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut. Inside, the air felt smaller, thicker. I stared at my hands, trying to understand how a single phone call had turned into this. At the station, they sat me in a room that smelled like old coffee and something sharper. Fear. Detective Miller placed his phone on the table. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He pressed play. My voice filled the room. Clear, steady, familiar. I have your daughter. If you want to see her alive again, wire $500,000. The cadence was perfect, even the slight rasp I get when I'm tired. It sounded exactly like me. But I had never said those words. I opened my mouth to deny it. Nothing came out. My throat closed. My shoulders sagged. People think innocence makes you loud, that you fight until someone listens. But when you've spent decades being told your reality is wrong, your nervous system doesn't roar. It freezes. For a split second, sitting across from that detective, I wondered if I had done it and somehow forgotten. That's what long-term gaslighting does. It doesn't just hurt you. It makes you doubt your own memory. They laid the case out like it was finished. A grainy photo from a neighbor's phone, me helping Isabella out of the SUV. Witnesses say you dragged her, Miller said. Photos of bruises on Isabella's arm. The mother claims you caused these. A printed transcript of the call. $500,000 is a lot of money, he added, for a children's book illustrator. Then he said the words that snapped something awake in me. Aggravated kidnapping. Extortion. Child abuse. In this state, that's life. No parole. Life. The fog lifted. I looked at the evidence again, not with fear, with clarity. The photo showed exactly what they wanted it to show. The bruises were real, but the timing didn't fit. And the amount. $500,000. It hit me all at once. That was the exact amount of debt Olivia had built up gambling online last year. I knew because she had begged me for $10,000 to cover the interest. And I had given it to her. This wasn't chaos. It was design. She wasn't just framing me. She was using me to extort her own husband, planning to disappear with the money while I went to prison. I sat up straighter. "I want a lawyer," I said. My voice was rough, but it didn't shake. "And I want you to check the metadata on that recording. It's a deepfake." Miller leaned back. "Right now," he said. "Your sister is crying in the lobby. Your parents are giving statements, and your niece is too scared to talk. You're alone, Ashley." He was wrong. I wasn't alone. I was just the only one in the room who finally understood the game. What I didn't know, what no one bothered to tell me, was that the story had already started to crack in the next room. Kyle was sitting there, Olivia's personal trainer, the man she'd been sleeping with for 6 months. He was sweating through his expensive gym shirt, hands shaking in his lap. Olivia had promised him $50,000 if he helped her scare Brandon into paying. All he had to do was drive the SUV and disappear if things went wrong. But when the SWAT team showed up, Olivia didn't protect him. As she screamed on my lawn, she leaned toward a rookie officer and whispered, "He made me do it. That man, Kyle, he's Ashley's boyfriend. They planned this together." Kyle listened as officers listed the charges: conspiracy, kidnapping. He understood then that he wasn't her partner. He was her insurance policy, a loose end. Kyle wasn't loyal, he was scared. And fear makes people honest. He told them he hadn't just driven the car, he had recorded everything. When they brought me into the observation room, it felt like walking onto a stage mid-performance. My mother was sobbing loudly. My father stood stiff with anger. Brandon sat slumped forward, hands clasped like he was praying for a miracle. And at the center of it all was Olivia, fragile, trembling, perfectly rehearsed. The moment she saw me, the act shifted. She screamed, pointed, accused. Before I could speak, Detective Miller opened a laptop. "We received new evidence," he said calmly, "from an accomplice." The video started playing. It was filmed inside Olivia's SUV. It showed her pressing makeup over Isabella's bruises, covering finger marks, practicing lines. "When they ask, you cry," Olivia said in the recording. "You tell them Aunt Ashley did it." Isabella nodded. Not because she understood, because she was afraid. The room went silent. Brandon stared at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. Olivia started yelling that it was fake, another deep fake, another lie. Miller shut that down with timestamps, location data, and Kyle's sworn statement. Then the door opened. Isabella walked in. Olivia's voice softened instantly. She held out her arms. "Baby, come here." Isabella didn't. She ran past her mother and wrapped herself around my waist. Her voice was small but steady. She said she'd hurt me if I didn't say you did it. That was it. The lie collapsed. Brandon reached for Olivia's phone. She tried to pull away. Then she screamed. Not the practice scream, the real one. She admitted it was about money. Miller placed her in cuffs. My parents didn't say a word. For the first time in my life, the truth didn't need my permission to exist. A year passed. Not quietly, but honestly. Olivia was convicted. 15 years. Brandon filed for divorce without a fight. He didn't contest custody. He didn't argue the settlement. He had seen enough. Isabella came home with me. Not to the cabin where everything broke, but to the life we built afterward. She's 9 now. Loud, curious, unapologetically present. The kind of child you only get back after fear stops running the house. Using the settlement, I built something I never planned to, an art therapy center for children recovering from narcissistic abuse. A place where no one is told to keep secrets, where silence isn't mistaken for good behavior, where kids learn that telling the truth doesn't make them unsafe. My parents tried to reach out. They said they wanted to understand. They said they were sorry. I listened once, and then I chose no contact. Not because I was angry, because I was finally clear. Reconciliation without accountability is just another version of erasure. Justice, I've learned, isn't only about prison sentences. It's about safety. It's about interrupting patterns before they get passed down another generation. It's about refusing the role you were assigned when you were too young to defend yourself. If you're listening to this and you've spent years being the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbs the damage, I want you to hear this clearly. You weren't weak, you were trained, and training can be undone. Before you go, take a second with me. If this story stirred something personal, if you recognized yourself anywhere inside it, you're not alone. Here on Family Justice Files, we tell stories about boundaries, accountability, and what happens when silence finally breaks. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Thank you for staying with this story. I'll see you in the next one.